Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Emily Rutherford-Liska, Executive Director of the Jacksonville Historical Society. And tonight we have a very special show for you. We have two individuals who are collectors of Jacksonville memorabilia. One who collects postcards and the other collects Civil War relics. And first I'll be introducing and saying hello to former Jacksonville Historical Society President Bill Jeter. Thank you for being with us. And Bill is a postcard collector of about 10 years or more, correct?
Yes.
And Jacksonville postcards mainly, primarily, correct?
Jacksonville and its area.
And surrounds. And I'd like to say before we get into the postcards that you have collected for the past decade, I'd like to just thank you because a lot of the viewers don't know that Bill is former president of the Jacksonville Historical Society, or may not know. And under Bill's leadership, the Jacksonville Historical Society captured one of their signature projects, and that was the James E. Merrill House downtown, right next to Old St. Andrews and across the street from the new arena. And Bill, I want to thank you for that, and I hope they're showing a picture of that now. In fact, I think they are right now. They'll put it up on the screen, and you see Old St. Andrews, and then you see the Victorian House just to the north of that, and that is the house you, along with a small committee, spearheaded. And Bill, we thank you so much for that. The house should be online in about 4 more months, and we have you to thank for that.
Well, it was a pleasure, and I was just a small part of the process, but I'm delighted at what y'all have done with it.
Well, thank you. And we're going to turn to your postcard collection now because it is an impressive one, and it really does give us such an important piece of Jacksonville's history. And as we turn to that, would you tell us how you got into postcard collecting, or why you got into postcard collecting, and maybe just a little bit about postcard history in general?
I just sort of bumped accidentally into postcard collecting when I had an opportunity to buy some postcards that were being sold by a business that was going out of business. I saw some old Jacksonville cards, they intrigued me, and I started learning about it. And collection of postcards is a huge hobby now, but not so large as it was back at the turn of the 20th century. Millions and millions of cards were traded all over the United States and all over the world, and it was just a huge pastime for people. Up until the Columbian Exposition, which was held in Chicago in 1893, all mail traveled in the United States by letters written and folded up and placed in an envelope and stamped. But beginning with that Columbian Exposition, some cards, which are now called either pioneer cards or private mailing cards, were introduced. I'm going to show a card which dates from 1901. And this depicts a Jacksonville scene. It's Hemming Park with the Confederate statue. It's dated 1901. You'll notice that the message is written on the front of the card. And as I turn it over now, you'll see that on the reverse side, it says private mailing card. It has a 1-cent stamp on it. The reverse side of the card was reserved only for the address. You could not write a message on your postcard with the address until 1907, when the cards as we know them today, which are called divided back cards, enabled you to write on the same side as the address. The message then was written right over the picture or right over the image sometimes up until 1907.
And you became such a scholar and collector of postcards that you actually authored a book on the subject that I'd love to show right now. It's called, right here, Jacksonville and Vintage Postcards, and this is From the Great Fire to the Great War, 1901 to 1914. I hope they're getting that on the screen. And this you authored on behalf of the Jacksonville Historical Society, and this book is very much available and a very popular piece. In fact, it is so popular that it went into a reprint recently, and we're very proud of that fact. And it's a wonderful book. And this book just touches on part of your postcard collecting, and you've brought some of your, I guess, favorites today. And I'd like to start looking at some of your favorites that you brought to show us, and most are related to Jacksonville.
They are, and the way the cards are grouped is in accordance with certain eras in postcard history. Initially, you had your undivided back card that I just described. That had the address, and it had on the front side an image, and you'll see the message on this card showing a skyline or bird's eye view of Jacksonville, I think what the caption says. This is a 1903 card, and the message is on the front. You can't see it, but the address and the stamp would be on the back. This next card is a view of Jacksonville, a river view. This was a photograph taken by a gentleman named O. I don't know what the O was. Last name Rust, R-U-S-T. He was a photographer, had offices on Hogan Street, took many of the photographs that became Jacksonville pictures. This is a view of Bay Street, and this is a 1905 image. Notice that the message is being written, such as it is, in that little marginal area on the front. Only the address is on the back. This image, also by O. Rust, shows the Duval County Courthouse across the street from the Duval County Armory. And again, we're still in the undivided back era, which means it predated 1907. This is the Duval County or the Jacksonville City Hall. On its site today is the Hayden Burns Library, which will soon be replaced by our brand new library facing Hemming Park. This image, as you can see from the glare, is a little different. This is called a real photo, and that glare's okay, really, because that's just it shows the deterioration of the photograph. That's at the Ostrich Farm. These real photos, and here's another one. This was the Duval Hotel tourist wagon. What would happen is a photographer, no doubt for a fee, would take a photograph which he would then turn into a postcard, and the person depicted could actually mail their family or friends an image of themselves on the postcard. These are real photos, they're called.
And you know, I'd like to just pause for a while because, as I say, you capture some of these in your book on Jacksonville. You start with the era right after the Great Fire, when you wrote about the fact Jacksonville had a population of 28,000, and you end in roughly 1914 with your postcards, when Jacksonville's population had actually soared in that short period of time, 13 years, to I believe it was 85,000 people. Just a phenomenal period of growth in Jacksonville's history. Is there any particular reason other than this was I guess, was this the greatest level of popularity, this period? Was that the period of most popularity of postcards?
Well, it struck me that Jacksonville's rebuilding and rebirth began after the May 1901 Great Fire and really continued until World War I, when it began to abate, after about 16,000 new buildings had been constructed in Jacksonville to replace those burned by the fire. During that same time period is what collectors refer to as the golden era of postcards. When World War I came about, the golden era ended mainly because the most sophisticated printing techniques were by the Germans, who became our enemies in World War I, and we didn't trade with them anymore. Postcards then began to be printed in the United States. They were inferior quality, and so, for example, this postcard called a white border postcard, and the reason that white border is there was to save ink. The era of white border postcards was 1914 to 1930. We're saving money. We're in the Depression, where the Germans have kind of pulled out of the postcard business. We're doing them here. This shows the 1890 railroad bridge along with our first bridge, auto bridge, which is the Acosta Bridge. You'll notice those warehouses in the foreground. This is an image of the pier at what was called Camp Johnston and what we now know as Jacksonville Naval Air Station. The caption on this one says that the St. Johns River is about 3 miles wide here. You can see some doughboys down there at the front of the dock. Again, this is a white border, which means it's sometime between 1914 and 1930. This is Jacksonville Fire Station number 1, Central Fire Station. Notice the horse-drawn fire engine. This predates the white border era. This is probably a 1907 to 1912 postcard.
And that building stands today.
And I think somebody lives in it now.
Yes, yes.
This is fun, a white border depiction of Hemming Park. Notice the straw bandstand there. There were concerts, and in the message on the back of this card, he says there's concerts every day.
Yeah, so few people realize there was a band shell that had that type of structure, architectural structure to it. And I'm sorry, they were on the the next postcard.
And I'd like to go to that. That shows the gazebo, which existed for many years. As a matter of fact, as a child, I saw President Kennedy speak from that gazebo. President Kennedy and President Nixon were here in the 1960 elections, and this postcard depicts, in the white border style, lots of people sitting in Hemming Park and enjoying something in the gazebo. We enter in 1930 to about 1944 what's called the linen era. They started using paper which had a high rag content, and the dyes enabled very vivid images to be depicted. This is a linen postcard. This era continued for quite a while. The linen era, 1930 to 1944. This is a welcome to Jacksonville linen. Then following the linen era, we had the chrome era. The first chrome postcard was a Union Oil Company promotion in 1939, but these chrome cards didn't really become popular until about 1945, and these are the cards we still use today. This is a linen card. It was created in Chicago by the Curtis Teich, T-E-I-C-H company. They did many linen cards. They were famous for it. This depicts Bernie the man in green. He had a wonderful restaurant. Everything he wore always was green, and he had a very popular restaurant in Jacksonville for years. Another linen card showing another popular restaurant, the Lobster House. This was famous in my mind as in the movie The Return of the Creature from the Black Lagoon. The creature came and snatched a lady right off the deck there at that restaurant. Now we're in a chrome era. Jacksonville was so proud of its expressway system in the 50s, and this depicts the Jacksonville expressway system with the skyline in the background. Another chrome. This is the popular Channel 4 figure Ranger Hal. Those of us in our mid-50s enjoyed Ranger Hal. In fact, we never missed a show. He used to come to the San Marco Theater and entertain, and he had a television show every day. He was a forest ranger and had a message as well as entertainment.
I'll admit to being there.
These wonderful cards are called Alligator border cards. They were created by the Langsdorff Company out of New York, but printed in Germany. The alligators themselves are actually raised or embossed on the card. They depict an image. The color printing process is phenomenal. They had cards from all over Florida, and quite a few of them were from Jacksonville.
Well, tell me, how did you get into this, Bill? Other than you talked about, well, I know how you got into it. You said you wandered into this sale. How would you suggest other people get into this?
Right now, I suppose the biggest market for postcards is, like everything else, on eBay, www.ebay.com, and you go to the collectibles, and they have a paper or ephemera section, and you can type in Jacksonville postcards or whatever era you're interested in. There are lots of postcard collector magazines that are just wonderful that you can get. There's shows where people set up in huge warehouses and sell these, and so just there's a lot of different ways there to do this.
Well, and we're going to go back and see about 4 or 5 more that you've brought, and these really are special. I love all these at the end. I believe you brought some of Mandarin. You brought several of the beaches, too.
There's 2 of the beach and 2 of the beach and 2 of Mandarin. This one is right after the turn of the century. It's a pre-1907 card. It shows swimmers at Atlantic Beach. And this white border card, probably in the 40s, shows the wonderful roller coaster and the pier and all the people swimming at Jacksonville Beach. Here we are in Mandarin. This depicts the home of Harriet Beecher Stowe. Notice how she built her veranda so that it would go around the oak tree. She couldn't bring herself to cut that oak tree down. It still stands today, although her house does not. This is everybody who grew up in Jacksonville will remember this from their youth, everybody who's my age anyway. The little train owned by Mr. and Mrs. Ward was located at the corner of Mandarin Road and San Jose Boulevard. For a dime, you could ride that steam engine around a big circle, and people came from all over, and every Sunday the whistle would blow and call us all to the train.
Well, what great memories and information and history you've brought to us today. I want to thank you so much, Bill, for being here, and I hope will you promise to come back and show us more of the collection?
If asked, I will return.
You are going to be asked, and what a job you did just going through all of those and so knowledgeable. I thank you, and I think a lot of people will be interested in getting your book on Jacksonville in vintage postcards. They can just call the Jacksonville Historical Society's office or go on www.jackshistory.com and learn more about postcards and more about the postcard book that you authored. Thanks again for